Field again with the oral history microphone, and today we're visiting the home of Pauline Barnes Thompson McGregor.
Don't tell it all.
Thank you, Miss Pauline, for letting me come to 511 Green Hill Drive here in Benton, and to get a little bit of the history of you and your family on tape for posterity and the enjoyment of our listeners. But you know, we also put a tape in the Pogue Library at Murray for genealogy researchers in this area. There's also one in the Benton Library where people can check them out like books, and one goes to the State Archives in Frankfort. So we do want to get the oral history of Marshall County and preserve it before it escapes us. Now, I assume you're 65 years old.
Quite a bit over that.
You want to tell?
Well, I don't care. I was 74 yesterday.
Your birthday was yesterday. Well, happy birthday to you. I won't try to sing it and ruin the tape. But where were you born?
Down here where Teresa's parking lot is.
So
right there in the corner, right
you were
there.
born in Benton.
1 block from Marshall
And
Courthouse.
your father was
Jim Barnes.
Jim Barnes, and your mother?
Eula Lee Austin.
She was in Austin.
Yeah.
Now, how many children were there? Do you have any brothers and sisters?
Oh, I have one sister and 2 brothers.
Your sister?
James, Maddie Lou Riley is my sister, and James Robert and Joe Scott Barnes are my brothers.
Well,
I'm the oldest one.
fine. Somebody's got to be the oldest.
Yeah, they get the blame for everything too. You know, they counted the leader.
Sure.
And,
Well, you were born in Benton, so I assume then that you went to school here.
I went to Church Grove 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
Daddy moved to the country out
Uh-huh.
of Church Grove, and I was in the 1st grade.
Well, do you remember any of your teachers there?
Oh yes, Miss Hilda Hyde and Charles Bondurant, Frank Beasley.
Charlie Bondurant,
He lives at Murray.
yeah, he lives at Murray now. In fact, I'm in Rotary Club with him, and he was an agricultural agent, I believe.
He didn't like me to call him Mr. Charlie, though, after I married, got out of school and everything. He said that made him seem too old. And his wife is a sister to my sister-in-law,
So
Joe Scott's wife.
there seemed to be a kind of a
Well,
family relationship
he lived
there.
about a half a mile from my grandpa, too, out Grandpa Austin out around Pleasant Grove.
Yeah. Well, very good.
But he was a good, and Mr. Naaman Duke, I had him. The only thing I learned when I went to school to Naaman Duke was the multiplication table.
And he made you learn it. Huh?
Well, he made me learn it because I had to stand with the face to the blackboard. He'd make me
So,
stand up there with my arithmetic book and study the multiplication table.
Were you sort of a mischievous person and you had to...
Well, I guess I was. I laughed a lot. I've been sent out of the room quite a bit for laughing.
Yeah. Well, you're still laughing, aren't you?
Well, I try to see, I just see the bright side of everything. Anything that bothers me, I think I'm kind of like Scarlett O'Hara. I think, well, I'll think about that tomorrow.
Yeah.
May Rogers sent me out of school once down here, the 8th grade. She said, you just go stand out in the hall a few minutes. Well, I looked up, here came Mr. Whittenberg down the steps, the principal, and I thought, well, I better get myself back in there. And I got in there. She said, you got over that in a hurry. Well, I got broke up again. I just went clear out behind the schoolhouse.
Oh, that's wonderful. Did you like these a one-room school like Church Grove?
Yes, in a way. I think I learned as much in my sitting back in my seat, though, as I did on the recitation bench, you know, when we go to class, because I always like to listen to the class ahead of me.
And when they heard it over and over
I like
again.
to hear them. And I just sat there and listened to them a lot of the time, make it like I was reading.
Well, I told somebody one time that I took the 8th grade 8 years.
Well, I think that's the way I felt.
So,
Well, I had
you
Thelma
heard them
Jones,
all.
too.
Of course, you had the 1st grade 8 years, and the 2nd
No.
grade 8 years, and the 3rd, and all the way through.
Well, they married out of 8th grade at Church Grove. A lot of the boys, they would work in the fields in the summertime and go to school maybe in the fall and winter. And
After
they'd
they'd completed the
Mhm.
8th grade, they just kept taking it over
Yeah,
and
they'd
over
come
again.
back because they wouldn't get the whole year. They'd go work in the crops.
Mhm.
Of course, school started first Monday in July then.
Yes.
And those boys would, I know, I thought they were old men. When I was in the 2nd grade and the person that married, I thought they had to be old. And of course, they weren't more than 18 or 19, I
Well,
was supposed.
some of them maybe were 20 or
Mhm.
so. I can remember I have my 1st grade picture at Blakely, and there's the row of boys on the top are men,
Mm-hmm.
people like Guy Jackson and
I remember him.
Grady Gordon, and well, I can't name all of them just offhand right now, but they were, some of them I suppose, 21 years old.
Well, I imagine so too. But I don't know, those boys, a lot of them went to get out of work on the farm, I think. Because they didn't learn a lot, I know. They were too old. I had a cousin down there that was a holy terror, but he was just...
Well, you
I
know,
liked him
that's the
anyway.
reason I went to college. Get out of suckering tobacco.
Oh, don't mention tobacco. That's a dirty word in more ways than one.
Well, what did you like in school most?
I liked history and geography.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked English for a while.
Those were my favorite subjects, too.
I just didn't go long enough. I worked on my MRS degree.
Oh, I see.
I married before I got out. I was married in the junior year.
Well, and you married
Clell
Clell
Thompson.
Thompson. I remember him
Mhm.
well because when I first knew you, you were attending church at Hardin.
Yeah.
And so I knew you at that point. Now, his father was
Charlie Thompson.
Charlie Thompson.
He had a brother, Fred. He lived in Olive Hill, Kentucky. And then a brother, Pat, and a sister, Lois Black.
You got started early on your family, that is with your husband. Now, what did you first do? Did you live on a farm?
Oh, yeah, we farmed. And then, see, they were building 641 in 1928 and 29.
Mhm.
No, they were surveying it in 29. And when they got it gravel, we put up a service station. It's just about a 14 by 16 building. And
Where
it
was
gas
this?
It's there just north of the intersection of 641 and 80, where Joe Young lives.
Mm-hmm.
It was right there. We just
Near Hardin.
Yeah, right there,
Yeah.
just north of Hardin. It was the only gas station from Benton to, Alma. I think there's one there, between there and Murray.
Mhm.
It was back in the John Dillinger days.
Well, yes. I can remember those days. After all, I was born in 1921, so we didn't live around Hardin, though, a great deal, although I was born near there. But we didn't come back till January 1st, 38, so I don't remember. What year was this? You remember?
That was in 30 and 31. Let's see, Jack was born in 33, so there's 31 and 32, and part of 33.
In those years, if I think I'm right, I don't believe they paved that road till about 33.
No, that's when they paved it.
So you had gravel and dust.
Just red gravel, and it was, we thought we were uptown people, though. We got a highway through there.
Of course.
We were didn't have anything on the old Benton and Murray Road, we called it, and had to go out past.
Had to go to Wadesboro to get on it.
Out to now the old road is Highway 80, and out there where Mr. Henry Blagg lived, and you could turn right there.
Uh-huh.
They used to. We went straight through there, though, too.
I remember that
Wadesboro.
road quite well. All right, what kind of station was it? Was it?
We sold Gulf gasoline. We just had gas, oil, cigarettes, and Coca-Cola. Cold drinks, that's all we had.
Sure, yeah. And did you have any particular exciting things that happened there? John Dillinger didn't drive up, did he?
No, but I thought his half-brother was there from the crowd. 3 men drove up one time. And, of course, we were just used to these small cars around here, and they had a big, fine car. One old man had all the money he could hold in one hand, in his hands. And he told who he was. He ran the stockyards in East St. Louis, he said. Well, he told Clell to fill the car up. Clell said, he put in about what he thought he ought to, and he said, well, it was 10-gallon. Of course, those old hand pumps, and he filled it up, and he said, okay, it's full. The man turned the switch on, of course, and we didn't know about the gas gauges on the dashboard. He said, I said, fill it up. Well, he went around there and put in 3 or 4 more gallons and ran the tank over. And he went around and said, pay me. And he told him what it was. Then we sold gasoline, 6 gallon for $1. And he went around there and said, pay me. And they started the car. Of course, they'd been in a brawl. They had their heads wrapped up in one arm in a sling. Just looked like a bunch of cutthroats. Looked more like pirates than they did. So when he said, pay me, they just started off. And he jumped on the running board of that car and said, I said, pay me. And they started off, and I thought, oh,
Weren't
my
you
goodness.
afraid?
I was scared to death. But we had a rifle just inside the door. And I don't know, we know now whether they had any shells or not, but I just reached in and got the rifle and brisked it like I was going to shoot him. I said, pay the man. Well, gee, they threw him a $10 or $20 bill, I don't know which, and he jumped off the running board.
Yeah.
And they took off there. They slung gravel all over me in the driveway and everything else. And he
So
said,
you were well paid for your
he
gas.
said, well, he bet that was the first people that ever tried to run off with something, got held up themselves. And he accused me and said I had just held up the customers. Oh, I was scared within an inch of my life. My mother worked herself to death over me running that place. Of course, he worked on the farm back down there, but he couldn't have done anything about hollering. But it was scary times. One time a black man came up there, and I filled his tank up, and he said, do you run this place for yourself? I said, yeah, in the daytime I do. And he reached under the car seat and said, well, here's what you need, and pulled out a great big pistol. I thought, oh, my goodness, what's he going to do? And he had that big old gun. And come to find out, he was from Almo, and he knew my father-in-law, and he said, girl, you don't need to be running this place. Of course, I thought a woman, I wasn't, but...
Might have been one of the Perrys.
Yeah, it was.
They were nice.
Yeah,
nice
it was.
people.
He was a nice fellow. And I said, you had just scared me to death. He said, well, I know your dad-in-law, and told me all about it. And I said, well, for heaven's sakes, tell me what you're going to do the next time. Because, of course, I laughed it off. And he was a good customer of ours every time he was down there. And from then on, he apologized for scaring me. So it wasn't because he was black. It was the gun.
Yeah.
I was reaping what I sowed, I guess.
I bet that gun looked 3 times as big as it was.
It looked like a cannon. But he was a real nice person.
All right. Well, those were some interesting times and scary times and so forth. Now, did you you said you married early. How did you meet Clell?
Well, Luther White and just a bunch of boys came down to Church Grove, and then we went to church. I went to Church Grove Church down there in that old hollow. They all came down there, and you know how boys and girls just meet at church, country churches like that. And he was actually a blind date. They came down to our house on New Year's Day, and there was a big snow on the ground. Daddy said, that's the craziest bunch of boys I ever saw. And but they came in, and that was our first date, and we went together 14 months before we married them.
Well, that's great. You know, you'd rather meet someone at church. There's a lot of other places you can think about.
He was a good guy. Clay was a good fellow.
Right now, what were some of the dating customs back then? Were there any particular difference? I don't suppose you could spend as much money as they do on dates now.
No, they didn't have much money. Nobody had money back then, but we'd go up Peggy and Spring Sunday afternoon, sit around up there at the pool.
I'm glad you've mentioned that. Not very many people have. Now, that was a center that drew people from as far away as Paducah, didn't it?
Yeah.
What was that Peggy in? Just a...
Oh, Mr. Redden, I think he had they call them concession stands now, but they sold drinks. And then there was a grocery up on the hill, they had cold drinks. But it was just a big pool that fed from a
spring.
Year-round spring.
Now, that water was cold, wasn't
it was cold. I don't know. Of course, I never went in it. I'm afraid of water.
Well, I remember swimming over there a few times. Not many, because, as I recall, it
You
cost a dime.
Yeah. And he had old cotton bathing suits he rented, and they'd have to hold to him, jump in. That was a lot of fun, though. And then, of course, we all just met around at houses and We'd all just date by gangs. Oh, we weren't allowed to date just couples, go out alone.
Mhm.
I don't reckon we ever had a date ourselves.
Always two,
Always,
three,
yeah,
four
carload.
couples. Carload go
Yeah.
together.
And we had to be home by 9:30.
Yeah.
That's the only story I ever told my daddy. When we went to Big End Springs, and he said, "You be home by 9:30." Well, I got home and the car played out. It's Luther White's old car, I think. And anyway, the car took out on us. Well, he said, "What time is it?" I said, "It's 9:15." And I had switched the hand round on the alarm clock. I got it down over the mountain. I thought, oh, if he looks up there and sees what time it is, I've got it. But, and I told him the next day that I told him the story.
Well.
It was 9:45.
Yeah. All right. Now, did you have any children?
One boy, Jack Thompson.
And
He lives right here with me. He and his wife.
Uh-huh.
I have 2 granddaughters.
you have 2 grandchildren, and you
Mhm.
get to see them.
No, one lives in Evansville and the other in Maitland, Florida, suburb of Orlando.
Well, that is a long way
Mhm.
from here.
Yeah, she sent me that bouquet yesterday.
Beautiful
She's a-
flowers.
She's a nurse, and so is her husband, and the other one says she's a gopher. Her husband is a cost accountant for some construction company up there, and they build houses, and she does the interior decorating.
Now, am I dreaming this, or did you run a grocery one time?
Oh, we had 3 groceries.
Well, tell
Excuse
us about number 1 and then number 2. and-
Well, after my husband had a heart attack, and the doctor told me to have to quit farming. We sold everything we had and bought that. It was the Ray Trevathan grocery there at Hardin.
in the Horace Warren buildings
Mhm.
along there. Yeah.
Excuse me. We bought that and ran that for a while, and he just hated the grocery business. He just wouldn't help in it because he just didn't like to be in the public like that, and of course he wasn't well either. We ran that a while, and we sold it, and he went back to farming. About 10 acres of bottom ground, and we went back up there. Well, then he had another heart attack and had to have his leg amputated. And we had to sell everything we had. And we moved to Benton. Down here, well, just across from next door at the ASC office down there on the corner. I bought that place. And we lived down there, and he wanted to go back to Hardin. No place was home, so I said, well, if we can buy a store, we'll go back because I've got to make a living. And we bought another store. Well, I bought that same store back.
Mhm.
And then we sold it to Glenn and Hazel Edwards and Afton Litz and her husband. And then, well, I went to beauty school, but I couldn't make it because I had to drive back, or go back and forth. It's just on the road so much, and him at home, handicapped like he was.
Well, you had to go to Paducah to
That's it,
attend
yeah.
that.
And I quit that, and we bought another store. After Mr. Warren died, we bought his store. And then we ran it 1 year to the day. Closed out the 30th day of May then, was the day we bought it, a year.
Uh-huh.
So I went back to working at Paducah. Jack was in college, and I knew somebody had to work because he worked, of course,
Now,
through
you
vacations.
farmed part of the time. What kind of crops did you grow?
Oh, strawberries and tobacco and corn and hay. Just
Now, strawberries were a big crop in
oh
western
yes,
Kentucky along about
mhm.
that time.
We
weren't they?
shipped strawberries with a truckload that
Was
had
Dixie Aroma the brand?
yeah, aromas and Blakemore's,
Uh,
and then we got the Tennessee shippers.
yeah.
Oh, we shipped a lot of strawberries, and I hated. That's one thing that hurt this country in the farming business when they
When strawberries
yeah
went
when
out.
they went out.
Yeah.
Mhm. But I didn't mind strawberry crops, but ooh, I hated tobacco. I just stayed sick in my stomach the whole time I was working in it.
When you suckered that, do you remember the gum that got on your
Oh,
arms?
do I? I can smell it right now. Clear to your elbows, and
And ordinary soap didn't do much
you
for
had
it.
to put kerosene on it to get it off of it.
Either that or
Yeah.
Grandma's lye soap.
Yeah, oh, it was awful. I guess that's the reason I never smoked. I just couldn't stand tobacco anywhere you had it.
Yeah.
I've worked. Farm life is the best life there is. It's the most independent.
Mm-hmm.
But you just got to work hard.
Certainly you do
It's
have
a
to put
gamble.
in a lot of hours, and you don't know if it'll rain or if it'll rain too
No.
much or.
It's just a gamble from the. It's like the old man said, tobacco's on the hand 24 months out of the year, day and night.
Right.
And you have to grow livestock along with it. One time I had 300 laying hens, and it takes a lot of feed for them too.
Now, you were married in along about 1930 or so. What was Hardin like
29.
then? Was it about the size it is now? Tell us about some
Well,
of the
there was,
stories.
excuse me, there was Saturday was like this big town.
Mhm.
People came to town in buggies and wagons and T models and A models, and you could hardly find a place to hitch or park
Uh-huh.
out there between Davenport's store and Pace's.
Now, you were at a
Store.
good spot because there were two giant stores.
Yeah, but they had gone out of business. See, they went out during the Depression. And,
Right.
but this Hardin was still it's a good business
There
town.
were two or three blacksmith shops, as I
Yeah.
recall. Let's see, did Claude MacDonald,
Well, that was
was it?
before we had the store. But then Houston Reddick Pace had a shop over there between the mill,
Mhm.
behind the mill, between the two stores.
And
And there's
sometime
2 or 3
along in there,
garages.
there was Solon Griffith. But
Yeah, he was just north of there on Main Street, I call it, just north of the City Hall. He had a garage there.
now, along about where the post office is and just beyond your grocery there at the Warren place on the end, wasn't there a cream buying station?
Yeah, it was a gas station and a cream buying station, and
Did Kratos Edwards have a barber shop along
across the
there?
street from there, on the same side where Black's Grocery is now.
Uh-huh.
But Clay Darnell had a store there. They had a little line of groceries and a cream station in that building where Clyde Youngblood had the store first, and then Clay and Agnes had it, where the post office is.
Where did Toby Clark run his movie theater?
Well,
Was it along in there?
one time, for a while, he had it, it was there next door to where Black's Grocery is now.
Mhm.
There was where Monroe Wilson had a grocery. And Dr. Hughes had his office upstairs.
Now, the bank closed in 37, but there was Crosby had an ice and coal house
Right
in
behind the
there.
bank.
Uh-huh.
We were talking about that this morning. Chuck said he remembered. And the old light plant, they call it, was down behind there, just east of there.
That Fate Cox
Yeah.
had built.
He
Yeah.
had that, and then he ran for the oil distributors, Standard Oil, I think.
Mhm.
I know they used to call him John D. Rockefeller.
John D. Rockefeller. Yeah. What was Benton like then? It was, I suppose, gravel streets
Oh,
mostly.
yeah. I remember when all the streets were gravel. There were a few sidewalks. And I was thinking this morning about, just west of the Baptist Church parking lot over there at 13th and Olive. There's a big bungalow there, and that's where the old Methodist church used to be.
Oh, well, now
Didn't you know about that?
No, I didn't. Now,
Well,
you're
now
the
that's-
first, everybody seen that I've ever talked to has implied that the Methodist church was always on the corner where it is now.
No, it wasn't, because I went to church there. I remember that's where I saw the first twins I ever saw in my life, Mildred and Madge Ely. Miss Della Ely lived just about 2 houses west of there. And Mother and Daddy always went to Methodist church, and I remember tiptoeing, looking in the baby buggy at them. And I'd never seen 2 babies like them. They both had bottles, and then they tore that church down. The preacher lived right across the street from there where the Baptist parking lot is now. The Methodist parsonage was there. And then Mr. Noah Mathis had a moving picture show, had a movie show there, theater, in the place in the old Methodist church building.
Yeah.
My daddy helped build that Methodist church over there. I remember when it was built. James Roberts said something about I remember things. I said, well, I guess I can remember things that don't amount to anything, but something happened yesterday. I don't pay any attention to it. But I remember my daddy got a woman out of a well down here in North Benton. She jumped in the well one night.
Did she intentionally do
Yeah,
it?
she was mentally ill.
Uh-huh.
She had had marital troubles, and she jumped in the well. Well, nobody would go down there and get her out. And my daddy, of course, went down there, and they put a rope around under his arms. He tied it himself. He thought he could tie knots better than a cowboy, so they put him down in there, and he got her by the hair of the head and pulled her up and put her chin between his knees and had to reach down under his knees and tie that rope around her, and he hollered, pull me up. And they started pulling her first. He said, no, pull me first, because he didn't know how well that knot was tied. And he said he knew he had to come out there, and he held on to her, and they pulled him out. I never will forget, my mother just almost had a breakdown after he got home and told her that. But that family always felt indebted to him over that.
Well, I'm sure they did. I can recall a few people who died in wells, and there was some sort of a gas
Yeah.
occasionally that got into, maybe when they were first digging them.
Yeah, before they struck water, there'd be a gas storm overnight, and sometime, they'd throw papers down in there, burn paper, and they'd try to get rid of the gas. But they never had trouble getting the water hardened, though.
No.
Because it was so low.
Water just stood around
Yeah.
much of the year anyway, didn't it? Well, tell us about your first radio, let's say.
You'd dilate if you'd seen that first one. It was about 4 inches wide and about 6 or 8 inches long. Had a copper coil on it. Clill ordered the parts. And he could put anything, he could make anything. And he ordered that. It's a Christian set, they call it.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever see one?
Yes, I have. We've mostly in museums.
Well, he had one. He ordered the parts and made that thing. Had a headphone set that he put. Now that's the first one we had.
Yeah. I can remember the first one that I recall belonged to my Uncle Rob Jackson, and it seems to me it was an Atwater Kent, and it was about the type you described, long and narrow, and it had nothing but earphones.
Well, this was just a board, just a pine plank with that coil. Looked like it'd been wrapped around something about larger than a broom handle.
Yeah.
Several coils. I said, you'll never hear anything of that. He said, you wait and see. So we'd lay in there in the bed at night, and he'd have one ear.
Listening to
one side of the earphone,
Amos
I'd
and
have
Andy,
yeah.
Lum and Abner.
Yeah. But the first real radio, some person brought one, I don't know, it was a county agent who was, brought one out Church Grove to the school. Well, it was just pouring down rain. Of course, reception was bad then back in, especially bad weather. Well, the people, all the old people, I called them, they went down there. And Mother and Daddy went, and they'd like to kill me. I had to stay at home. They wouldn't take us out because it was raining. And a lot of the people said, oh, there's nothing coming of that. That's somebody outside playing a phonograph. So they didn't believe, they just couldn't make them believe that was a battery-operated radio.
That's like Janie's grandmother, Nettie Landon.
Oh, yeah, I knew her.
She
I've known her all my life.
didn't believe that anybody had been to the moon.
No.
There's a movie, they'd
Yeah.
fake that somewhere.
That's what Jackie said about Stone Mountain down in Atlanta,
Yeah.
We went up there, we were on top of Stone Mountain. She said, I said all the time they didn't go to the moon. Said, here, look at this. There's pits on top of that. And she's just a kid and said, here's where they landed. But,
Well, I see our time's about gone. Do you have any special story or life's most embarrassing moment or something you could
I've
tell
had a
us?
lot of those.
I know. You've told me about the gun and about
But
the...
I'll tell you what happened to me once. I never was very good in mathematics. I didn't like it anyway. But our teacher, we had our geometry class in the west wing of the old school. You don't remember Benton old school before they did
No.
it. Well, anyway, our class was in the west wing, and our teacher always got to school late. Well, we went in class one morning, and the class had a door in each corner, the north and the south side. Well, the boys thumb-bolted that door. Well, the teacher was out there rattling the door knob trying to get in, and I thought, well, I'll go let him in. I got up to go let him in, and when I took hold of the doorknob, he ran down the hall and came in the other door. Well, there I stood, holding that doorknob. He said, "No wonder you make bad grades." He said, "You've always got your mind on some kind of meanness." And I was just as innocent as I could be. Well, I wasn't any use in trying to defend myself. I'd never made him believe that I wasn't. I just let him think I
Just had to bear the brunt alone.
Oh, John Stroud, that bunch of boys sitting back there dying laughing.
Well, I certainly thank you for allowing me to come. You've given us some very interesting things that happened to you and your family. Very, very quickly, now, you later married McGregor?
Guy McGregor.
And that was another oil business,
Yeah,
wasn't it?
he's in the shale oil business.
Uh-huh.
We had 9 years of a good marriage. He had 2 children,
Uh-huh.
boy and a girl, Gail and Barbara, and I thought the world of them. We just had but he died suddenly.
Well, that's fine. Now, this is Ray Mofield speaking. We return you back to our studios.